It's that time. Let's see, we have a few things to talk about today. But I'd like to get the technical update up first. Rao, are you here?
Yes, I am. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to share the link here and then share my screen. Okay, welcome to Community Update 120. In terms of what is released to the public, the node versions have remained the same, but it's actually quite dynamic when you look under the covers in terms of what we're doing with the versions with testnet versus mainnet and the observers and the exchange nodes on each of those. So I don't like the fact that this release section here on the top is getting longer and longer, seems like, with every in the last few tech updates. But I'll try to just identify for you what is going on there. And once we have 0925, I mean, part of this is really a result of what we have chosen to do as a development team, to say that we'll run multiple branches so that people can work on changes in parallel and then try to bring them back into the main dev. So as each of the branches has different degrees of progress, trying to keep the changes coordinated is kind of what is kind of making it this look complicated, though overall, I mean, it's not that complicated really. So anyway, 0924 is the actual current release, but by and large, that's only applicable to observer nodes. So most of the observer nodes and exchange nodes are running 0924. There is a featured branch. This is the one that people we've been talking about for the most part last several sessions, that deals with the last finalized state. Now, as Tomislav started working in last finalized state, and now NetZipper also has joined him in the effort, there are improvements done to the block store, and then to the DAG store, and most recently to, what is in development right now is capturing part of the Casper state also in LMDB. So because of these are all interlinked changes, interlinked improvements, whereby each of them is used by other features. It can make things either last finalized state easy, or what we need to do going forward with the block merge, making that easy. So there's a lot of streamlining and cleaning up of the state, and also modularizing it. We're kind of trying to, where there's a situation that seems a little bit like spaghetti or something, we're trying to unravel that and simplify that. Also, a lot of effort is going into reducing the traffic and storage, and bringing things, whole block data in when it is not needed. All of that is being cleaned up. We mostly are going with indexes and minimizing the amount of data that needs to travel either through the network or to be processed at an individual node, or to be stored in the memory. So all of those type of changes are going on. That's kind of what's going on. But so it's very exciting, I think, when we get this, when we can get this featured branch merged into the main branch. Eventually we'll have a much more improved version of Node. And so I don't want to give any date at this point in time, but it's very soon. We should be able to get to that soon. So that's where we are. Testnet is running an improved version of 0923, which is just a little bit beyond what the mainnet validators are running, which is the 0923 LTS. is what is running on the main net. Coming to the, again, the focus remains last finalized state, and anything we discover on the path to last finalized state, as well as bug fixes. We did discover a couple of bugs, and then we have fixed those. And hardening the system overall, and like I said, we don't have the numbers on the performance improvement yet, but there should be some performance improvement coming out of that. So the API work for exchanges at least has stabilized. Will is now beginning to shift his focus to the block merge implementation in parallel to Tomislav and NetZipper working on the last finalized state and the these other things that I talked about, the block store, DAG store, Casper state, storing that. So that's where we are. So actually, on block merge, we are close to completing the spec on that. Greg and Mike Stay and Tomislav and NetZipper, there were multiple rounds of conversation, clarification, questions and all that. So that's complete now, and we should be publishing that block merge spec soon, and Will is going to start implementing that. One of the things that was accomplished this last week, our current tests, when we do an EPR, they were taking about 1.5 hours. A large part of that is driven by Casper tests. Tomasz, when he was here, he did parallelize quite a bit of that, but the Casper tests were still taking 1.5 hours. Now, Tomislav was able to further parallelize the Casper tests so that basically we have the CI runs or testing integration testing runs for about 1/2 hour every time we merge a PR. So that's substantially improved from where we were. And I think that by and large is the summary of where we are tech-wise. Greg, am I forgetting anything, or is there anything we should be highlighting more? Or?
No, I think that's about right. That's about right. I think that was a lucid and accurate characterization. Yeah, I guess all I would add is that I'm extremely pleased with what's going on in terms of the cleanup that's associated with the last finalized state. So there's a lot of care and diligence going into reorganizing the storage so that everything goes into LNDB and that there's a proper abstraction layer so that we can swap out different key value stores and then teasing apart or figuring out all of the different dependencies. And some of those dependencies will actually impact the conflict set calculation, which we're using for the block merge code. So so even though it's proceeding a little bit slower, it's a lot more thorough, and I'm very excited about what's going on. Yeah.
Are there any questions on the state of the tech?
I didn't hear, I guess I wasn't paying attention fully about the block merge progress and with respect to the performance.
Yeah, where we are with the block merge is that we have the spec completed, or close to completion, I should say. So it should be complete later today, tomorrow, or something like that. So then Will is going to start implementing that, and Tomislav and NetZipper are continuing with finishing up the last finalized state and the pieces that I mentioned in there, the cleanups. And they're going to join the block merge effort once they're done with that. So that's kind of where we are. Does it answer your question, or did you have something more detailed?
No, that answers it. I guess I presume we don't have an estimated time on that currently.
Not at
Not
the
yet.
moment. Yeah.
Not yet. However, I will say that again, some of the state cleanup is paving the way for the state management necessary for the block merge. So that came to light in today's discussion.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right. Any other questions about the tech update? Okay, so moving on then. So far, we didn't get a lot of engagement on the ranking of the projects. So the second round of voting. And that closed. And in fact, it closed before I even got a chance to vote. So I'm going to recommend to Steve Ross Talbot that we extend it by some number of days. But I also want to urge the community to get in there and do a ranking on the 6 projects that sort of made it to the next round.
I tried to do that, but for some reason couldn't access the sheet. But I agree it should be extended.
Okay, all right. I'll let Steve know that was a kerfluffle, and maybe other people ran into that as well. So I'll let Steve know. I also need to mention that for personal reasons, Lori Luo has stepped down from her position and will be devoting herself to RChain through the community. And we are getting additional engagement from someone who has been in an advisory board and very, very strong supporter of RChain, who is stepping up to help with some marketing work in China. So our gratitude, heartfelt gratitude to Lori for her efforts on behalf of the co-op. What I would say is that Lori's genius was to go ahead and push us to release mainnet, even though none of us felt we were ready. I think it's clear we weren't ready, but if we hadn't done it, we wouldn't have gotten all the engagement from the exchanges and other corners, which was the much needed pressure on the platform to begin the process of hardening it and making it more stable. So that was a good effort on her part. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on then, there has been a lot of discussion about voting mechanisms, and I wanted to have some just recognize that there's a very, very simple mechanism that we can use if we aren't able to get a voting mechanism together before October. So, and I'd really like to have a good discussion within the community about this. So the simplest mechanism that I can imagine is that the cooperative assigns a rev address to every registered member of the co-op, every registered member who has passed KYC, let's say, and emails that rev address to the email that was used to register with the co-op. And then the co-op can send a very tiny amount of rev to those rev addresses for the purposes of voting. And then when issues or items of business come up, there would be addresses associated with each of the different possible outcomes. And a member can send rev from their co-op assigned rev address to the outcome that they wish to see. And then we can simply look at the blockchain and tally up only those votes which are from registered rev addresses. So even if someone dumped a bunch of rev into some of the outcome addresses, we wouldn't care because we're only looking at the ones from the registered that have a source from a registered rev address. So it's secure. It's not really hackable. The only potential problem that I see is if the co-op assigns the address, then there's this issue of the private key. So so there would have to be some, either, we'd have to do some kind of dance around the communication of the private key, or the cooperative member has to send us a rev address that they want to use for voting, and then the co-op would send rev to that address. So apart from that particular technical detail, this suffices because now you can use wallets as a voting interface. And it doesn't require anything else fancy. It's just literally there's some rev sitting in your assigned voting rev address, and you send dust amounts to the outcomes that you want to see. So we can do that with the existing technology, no implementation necessary. So any thoughts, questions, comments about this particular proposal?
Thank you, Greg. That was very helpful during the member hangout earlier today. That was voting was the topic of discussion. So we have, including the method you just mentioned, 4 methods that we're kind of working through. So we know the goal is to have a operational DAP come October for the annual general meeting. So we're in May now. So we need just to make sure that the efforts are progressing along, and we can do ample testing and so forth, so that when September comes around, we're feeling confident we have a solution that's going to work for all the membership. So I'm glad we're having these conversations now. So thank you for bringing that up.
Cool.
I had a quick idea of just setting up a website to be a registration oracle, then email all members a unique invitation code, allowing them to access the website oracle, authenticate themselves, and then just plug in their rev address that will be for their voting. Yeah,
that's a refinement of the idea I was talking about. But a rev address based voting using rev itself as the voting token is the essential idea, and that means that we don't have to invent any more code. And now that we also have multi-sig wallets per the POS, you can imagine fancier voting mechanisms. So, for example, a group of people could sort of subdivide their vote, and by having their registered rev address essentially be a multi-sig wallet. So, and a group of people could vote as a block for one thing, and it would, the N of K multi-sig would support that. So there are lots and lots of building blocks already here that would make it possible to make fancier voting mechanisms.
And once we have the annual general meeting and we have a successful vote, this is a marketing opportunity as well. So being able to showcase that RChain develop a voting mechanism using the RChain platform, that'll be a great opportunity to get the word out about that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I know, Jim, I think you sent me a Discord message about questions about using rev as a voting mechanism. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, you did. I mean, we had 4 different methods. And we were thinking about potentially implementing more than one. We were, I guess, sort of unclear on what your method was. In terms of the difficulty in mechanically going through and entering all the votes and all the issues with a wallet, I think we probably should consider perhaps an alternative mechanism. I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't think it's any more complicated than.
Maybe we could on Monday at the Casper stand-up, maybe we could discuss it a little more.
Sure, happy to. I mean, we know how complicated it was to set up the voting mechanism for last time. So I don't think it's any more complicated than that. Just simply, for each, every item that requires a vote has to have some finite number of outcomes. And for each outcome, there has to be a rev address. Ranking would be more complicated. So if you want to do ranking, then you have to devise some additional mechanism. But that would be true of any implementation. Cool. Let's see. We had the special board meeting yesterday. Steve, Ian, were there any other issues that we might want to mention here?
Offhand, no, I can't think of any.
Okay. All right. Then unless there are any other questions, comments, concerns from the community, we can call it here. Anything anyone wants to chat about? All right. Very good. Thank you all, and see some of you on Friday. And next week we will be returning with our RCast podcast. So looking forward to that with Christian Williams. So look for that next week. But everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk again soon.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.